atop my mountaintop here in Mount Manitoba, the home of NotHallOfFame.com, I've got Glenn Paslawki, my co-host, my amigo, the greatest triathlete that the city of Buffalo has ever produced. And if I say it enough times, it's going to be true.
It will be fact if you say it enough times. Thanks, Kirk. I appreciate it.
Well, absolutely. For years, hey, Madonna told everyone that she was hot, and we all bought it for a while. But anyway. But we've got some special guests. I promised you special guests. When you said we're going to finally look at a hockey game, this is the one you picked. And depending on how you want to call it, we could just call it the brawl at the Joe Louis Center. It's just so Joe Louis. I'm so Quebecois. Yes.
I love when you're Canadian slips.
Yeah, I know you do. Yes, you always love it also too whenever I say something incorrect and you never actually correct me. But that's only something that.
Are you going to hold that grudge for the USFL game?
Yes, I am, because I'm petty that
way. The Corso game.
I'm always a little bit petty that way. But
I'm sorry.
Yes, but I brought you one, not just one. I brought you two guests. Ron Katz, you know, and if you are a fan of Denver sports, you know Ron, because he's probably there. Ron Katz is not just a fan, he is fan of the year. And also the man who's spearheading Randy Gradishar to get into the Pro Football Hall of Fame. And when I approached Ron, what did you tell me? That you were going to bring a guest?
Well, I thought of someone who'd be perfect. And Adrian is so gracious. He's mentored so many young journalists and just people in Colorado with the love of hockey for the work he's done in journalism. And just, I've seen him, you know, away from the journalism side, just being very kind to people.
And Adrian, you didn't just write the book, you did write the book on this feud.
Well, it's true. And first of all, I want to say you're way too kind to me there, Ron, for that. But thank you. That was certainly nice to hear. I've had a
exactly
turbulent career, I would say, but the most constant thing for me in my life has been, you know, I've always covered the Avalanche and just tried to do the best that I can. I always just want to see the next crop of people after me. Maybe, yeah. I feel like I'm a little long in the tooth still covering this team still, but you know, I still love it. And thank you. Yes, I wrote a book called Blood Feud. It was about the Avalanche Red Wings rivalry, and yeah, it got a bit of a boost in sales. I'll admit to you guys with the ESPN show that just came out. It was surreal in a way, seeing myself on a TV screen on an ESPN show. But you know, the bottom line is that you know, I was there. I covered it all, and happy to talk to you guys more about it here.
Yeah, we're really excited to have you. But before we sort of get to this game, I want to talk about hockey in Denver in general. I wore just I got my throwback Colorado Rockies jersey on here, so I thought I was gonna. I could have put on my Quebec Nordiques one, but I'm still too butthurt that you took my team. You took my team. So Denver, I will say this: as a young Canadian then, certainly not now, it was certainly a kick in the guts when we lost Quebec. And then later on Winnipeg. Now Winnipeg has a team again. But Denver, to me, always felt like it was a hockey city, and it was at one point. And we talked a bit before we went live about sort of ownership issues. So this is for you, Adrian and Ron. What was sort of the vibe when you were going to get a team, like, or get a team again? I mean, like, Colorado it's meant for hockey, isn't it?
Well, if I can start out, yeah. So when I put myself back into, you know, March of 1995, Denver was a city on the rise in a lot of ways. A lot of people were moving here, including myself, who had done that 4 years before when I moved from New Hampshire to Colorado and Denver, and didn't have any clue what I was going to do. Like, I was, you know, part-time worker for I remember a place called the Job Store. It was a place where they hired temp workers to do odd jobs, and one of the things I did was call people for trash company that their bills were overdue and tell them that they had to pay up or else their trash wouldn't be collected. You can imagine the fun that was.
Well, I'm just trying to figure out if you were like affiliated with one of the 5 families garbage collecting and have to go downtown and take care of that if they don't pay up.
I wish I was. I probably would have had a lot more money than I did. I had about $7,000. I remember I came to Colorado with, which is pretty good money for a kid back in 1991. I actually lived back home for a couple of years out of college. Good in some ways, very bad in other ways. Good in some ways that I could save money working in a newspaper that I did in Concord, New Hampshire. Bad in other ways, like I had no social life whatsoever. I lived in my parents' basement. I don't think I went on a date in like 2 years in that time. So, when I came out to Denver, I was like a lot of other people, sort of looking for a fresh start, I would say. And long story short, I covered. I finally got on at the Denver Post as kind of a part-time high school score taker, and I did that. And then I got, kept bugging the bosses about, hey, I'm in the building, so I have a journalism degree. I had a little bit of sports writing experience in Concord, New Hampshire. So they basically gave me the DU hockey beat at that time. Then when Denver Grizzlies came, I covered that team too. Then when the Grizzlies got upended by the Avalanche, I was the guy who got the tip about the Avalanche coming to town. So I followed that story all along and broke some stories. And, they gave me the beat as a full-timer in 1995. So long story short, I always felt bad about the people of Quebec. Like, I've been back since then, and I did big stories about that. And believe me, I know how great a hockey city Quebec is. The problem was, they had so much blue-collar support among the fan base, but they didn't have quite enough corporate support at that time. And so the team was sort of surreptitiously moved by the owners of the Nuggets at that time, who basically were living on credit at that time. Just everything was on a credit card for the people of Comsat Video Enterprises, but they put it on their credit card essentially to move the Nordiques to Denver. And good fortune for them, they had a Stanley Cup team in the making. And I was the lucky guy who got to cover that team that first year. I was flying on the team play. Let's to put a little perspective on how weird my life was. In 1992, early 1991, I'm sorry, I was living in my parents' basement, no job, no car, nothing. Right. 1995, I was full-time guy on the Denver Post, flying on the team plane, talking hockey with Joe Sakic and Patrick Waugh. Don't ask me how that happened, really, but that's a little bit how it got started for me. And then it just, then the Red Wing rivalry happened soon after that. So I know we want to talk about that. So let's go.
Well, but before we go there, I was reading a lot of your stuff today. I think we all owe you a big thank you, because if it wasn't for you, I learned they would be called the Rocky Mountain Extreme.
Right. That's right. Well, that's a side story, but yes, that's true.
Please tell it. I'm dying to hear more about that, because I remember when I heard that, it's like, you gotta be kidding.
I've written a couple things, and I finally got some proof of like 3 or 4 or 5 years ago about the real proof of that. It took me a long time, but so 1995, Avalanche come to town. They hadn't been named yet, though. They came to town with no name. They actually had a meet and greet session at McNichols Sports Arena right after they were sold. And all the players came, management, everything, but they didn't have a name yet. So they had it on these T-shirts that said Colorado NHL on it. If you can get your hands on one of those, that's a real collector item, by the way. Well, what happened was the principal owner of the team at that time was a guy named Charlie Lyons. He's a free-spirited guy. He's a great guy. I'm still friends with him today. But he was kind of a ski bum. He liked to go up to Aspen a lot and hang out, watch the Extreme game, which was a new thing at that time. So his idea to call the team when they bought it was to call it the Rocky Mountain Extreme. And, that was it. That was going to be the team name. And they drew up logos. They registered it with the NHL. The problem for that team name was somebody leaked it to me. I won't say who, but they leaked it to me that was going to be the team name. And of course, I put it right in the newspaper the next day, Denver Post, front page story, new hockey team to be called Rocky Mountain Extreme. And what happened was, once that got out public before it was official, the public had a chance to weigh in on that. And TV, there was a radio talk show host named Dave Logan, who's still on the air here, former NFL player, a big name in Denver, who took a hold of the story and said, "What do you think, fans?" And like 99%, the callers were like negative. Well, this is stupid. It was a terrible team name. And all throughout the day, it was just like terrible name, terrible name. I didn't care though, because I thought it was true. It wouldn't matter. I'm just sitting there relaxing with my big scoop. Well, what happened was, after all that blowback from the public, the next day, I got a call from somebody at ComSat who said, "Well, Dater, I think your story isn't going to be true." I was like, "Oh no." The blowback was so bad, wasn't it? And it was true. Fans hated it. So what they did was put the name back in a sort of public drawing of 8 team names that they could name it. And that, was supposed to be just like, pure democracy. Whoever gets the most votes wins. Avalanche was one name. Black Bears was one. I remember Renegades is another. Rapids, I think, was another, which became a soccer team. And Avalanche won. So that's how the Avalanche actually got their name, after the Rocky Mountain Extreme fiasco.
Yeah, and that wasn't exactly original, because there was a major indoor soccer league team called the Denver Avalanche
That's right.
in the 80s.
That's right. MISL. Yep.
Yes.
Yep. Few people remember that, so good on you for knowing that.
Never thought of the Nordiques, huh? So it never was going to be the Colorado Nordique. Never.
No, it wasn't. It wasn't. It was something that was expressed to me at the time. Like, we love the Nordiques, we love our history here, but we need to start a brand new brand. Basically, that was the thinking at the time, and that was probably correct thinking when you look back on it. I mean, I don't know if Colorado Nordiques would have sounded very good in the end, right? I don't think so.
That francophone population of Denver wouldn't really rally behind that, huh?
Yeah, all 3 of them.
Yeah, kind of like the Baltimore Browns after Art Modell took his team to
That's right.
Charm City. That would not go over very well.
And also, too, if Quebec ever does get a team, maybe it'll sort of get that name back. I mean, it happened here in Winnipeg. So.
Oh, for sure.
Right.
I hope so. I really hope so.
Yeah. It's interesting too when we look at the history of this, or it is to me, because a lot of rivalries just begin just out of geographic nature and playing each other often. Colorado and Detroit are in the same conference, or they were at that point. Saying that though, really this didn't begin until the playoffs the year before, and we all know really what sort of transpired that hit on Chris Draper. And I guess you were there for that. So like, do you remember, Adrian, do you remember the reaction, not just from, well, obviously with the city was disgusted with, or not disgusted, or Detroit was disgusted, but Colorado wasn't. What's the feeling of Claude Lemieux at that time? Like that player that everyone loves to hate, you want him on your team, but you hate him if you're an opponent.
Denver people still really knew, a ton about Claude Lemieux, even during that whole first year. I mean, when Claude Lemieux came, he had a reputation as a bit of a bad boy, whatever, but nothing absolutely larcenous and criminal or anything. They knew that he was a guy who had won the Conn Smythe Trophy just a few months before with New Jersey against Detroit primarily, which he had a great series. I covered that series, by the way. It was the first pro hockey series that I ever covered, cover to cover, so to speak, was that series, Detroit versus New Jersey. And I'll never forget it. I mean, it was so, I'd just gotten off the plane basically after covering high school sports. And all of a sudden I'm there covering versus New Jersey. Boy, what a feeling that was. But moving ahead, the Avalanche get Claude Lemieux, kind of a contract dispute in New Jersey. The Devils trade him as part of a three-way deal. People forget that it was not actually the Devils that traded Lemieux to Colorado. It was actually the Devils that traded Lemieux to the New York Islanders as part of a three-way deal that involves Steve Thomas. And so Steve Thomas goes to the Islanders, Claude Lemieux goes to the Avalanche via the Islanders. When that had happened, though, I don't have any specific memories of being like, oh my God, this is going to be a powder keg. I saw the hit. I was in the arena, and I was there at McNichols Arena. But I think at that time it seemed more like part of the game. Draper goes off the ice. He's holding a towel to his head, but nobody knew how badly he was hurt until well after the game. So I think at the time I was just like, all right, bloody hit, bad hit. Lemieux got a penalty, kicked out of the game, major, probably what he deserved. But it wasn't until after the game that anybody knew how seriously hurt Draper was. And Claude Lemieux was, the weird thing was Claude Lemieux was sort of, oblivious at that time to how bad he was hurt, but also he was trying to celebrate a, Western Conference final victory in a game that he got kicked out of. Yes, but, he was still happy, and he thought, I think he thought it was going to blow over and it wasn't that big a deal until, he learned later how badly Draper was hurt. And then, everything just sort of mushroomed from there.
Mm-hmm. I also was learning too, Red Wing players didn't even know at that point just how bad he was hurt. My dog apparently agrees with that. Sorry about that. Trouble with having a little animal.
Yeah, Kirk, even like I remember reading some of the Red Wings did kind of have an idea, and were having trouble reconciling Claude Lemieux in the handshake line right after that. That was decided. Yeah, Dino. Yeah. Oh, who himself has had a few incidents, but great player in his own. But like, I can't believe I shook that bleep's hand, right? So it's just tough.
And so now we fast forward to this game, but before that, they met 4 times. They were scheduled to meet 4 times. This was the 4th. Now, the first 3 games, or the first 2, Claude Lemieux wasn't playing, and he did play in the 3rd, which was only 10 days before. So, guys, walk me through, like, what was the feeling when you have Detroit coming in? Or do you even, because it's Detroit looking for revenge, not so much Colorado, is it not really played up that much, that game before, 10 days before?
Yeah, you're talking about the first game between the Wings and Avs when Lemieux was a player, right, in Denver?
Well, yeah, the following season.
Right. Yeah, he missed the first 2 games on their season schedule against the Wings. He had a torn abdominal muscle, which kept him out for like 3 months. I remember being loaded for bear on that game as a writer. I thought, all hell's going to break loose. And, this is the first game back between these 2 teams and all that's happened. And almost nothing happened that entire game. There was a brief skirmish between Lemieux and Draper behind the net. I think it was in the first period. But nothing really came of it. Everybody just sort of shoving a little bit and then just sort of trash talking. But that's the way it ended. I think the Avalanche won the game. They they won the first 3 games of that season series with the Red Wings after beating them in the Western Finals. So they're 3-0. Yeah, but there was that one final game in Detroit, March 26, 1997. The Avalanche played the night before in Hartford, beat the Whalers very convincingly. And then it was that final game in Detroit at the Joe Louis Arena. And that's when, the rivalry took a new dimension. I mean, by then, it was a very serious rivalry. Lemieux and Draper had obviously their incident. Draper and his, every Wings fan hated Lemieux. There was talk of revenge. There was talk of all kinds of things. But until that night in March 26th, nothing had really happened yet. And it probably shouldn't have happened. If the Avalanche were smart, they probably shouldn't have even played Lemieux in that game. I mean, when you look back, they should have just come up with an excuse to scratch him. That would have crushed the Red Wings' hopes for any kind of revenge on him. I think the Avalanche probably would have won the game because all the emotion would have been taken out of it for Detroit, and they would have won a 4-0 season series. The Avalanche still won the President's Trophy despite losing that game, but they went in with all the sort of scenario and attitude and everything turned around on them because of that one night in March 26th, and that's the night that everything happened.
So
go ahead.
No, go on.
Well, just to speak to that, I mean, we talked it on the Hockey Hall of Fame show about there being a code, and Lemieux being scratched for that final game and ensuring that he wasn't going to get into any type of situation. Wouldn't have that violated the hockey code that we've all come to know and some of us love, or some of us just shake our head at the unwritten hockey rules?
Yeah, I think so. I think that was part of the culture still back then. You didn't want to look like a wimp. Yeah, a little bit. I don't think that, I still think that the Avs would have been much smarter not to play him, and they should have known better that something really stupid could happen in that game. And the Avalanche didn't really even need to win that game at all. I mean, Detroit was like a 4th place team in the conference back then. They didn't need to worry about the Red Wings at all. Dallas was their number one real competitor at that time for the trophy, President's Trophy. But I think what happened was they played the night before in Hartford. They win easily. They're sort of cruising along with the President's Trophy. I think they had a little bit of, they had a lot of, not just a little maybe, but a lot of disdain for the Red Wings. They thought they were too soft still, not on their level. We'll just go into Detroit and beat them again with Lemieux. I think that was their attitude. But in hindsight, they should have been a little smarter because Detroit had nothing to lose going into that game and everything to gain. And you never want to put yourself in that situation as a front runner, where some underdog can just beat you with one big haymaker. The Avalanche would have been a lot smarter to just say, hey, Claude Lemieux is sick tonight. And all those threats of violence against him and what was in the Detroit newspapers that very day going into the game. Well, sorry, folks, you're not going to see a show. You're just going to see another Avalanche game against the Red Wings. But I think they, a little bit of pride got the better of them. They decided to play Lemieux, and everything changed after that. That one night changed the fortunes for those two teams for like 2 straight years. The Red Wings won 2 Stanley Cups, and the Avalanche were sort of caught trying to regain their, for lack of a better word, machismo after that, and it took like a couple years to get it.
Adrian, I just a quick question. I know it's a completely different team and kind of era to it, but with them maybe keeping Claude out of the lineup or pulling him back, before it got too crazy, the analogy that comes to mind is 2003 Vancouver with Steve Moore and Granado throwing him out there the entire third period. Like,
right.
Like, what are you doing? Like, you're just basically waving, the steak at Pavlov's dog.
Yep.
And
Yep. 2004, actually, not 03.
Oh, that's right.
Game in
That's right.
Vancouver. Yep. Crazy night, obviously. Yeah. I don't know how many parallels you can, absolutely draw from the Moore game to the Lemieux game in Detroit. I think things were different in the sense that, first of all, Vancouver never should have been so hyped up over that whole thing with Steve Moore. I mean,
exactly.
It was a regular season game. It was it was a hard hit by Steve Moore on Marcus Naslin. It hurt him a little bit, but he only missed like a week or something. Big deal. Everybody in Vancouver made out to be, the Kennedy assassination or something. It was just.
Well, which is interesting because Vancouver Canucks fans are not known for overreacting.
Yeah, I know, right?
Let's burn down the city.
I love the people of Vancouver. I love City of Vancouver. So that's the prelude to my statement. Yes, Vancouver fans can get a little over emotional. I was there when they rioted that night. So anyway, weird.
So when you were there, did it feel different?
But it was the same feeling. It was the same feeling of bloodlust in the air. And I don't, the thing with Moore was just completely contrived. But the thing with Lemieux was more legitimate, at least, I thought, for Red Wings fans to feel that way. Because, Lemieux had not only injured one of their best players, but laughed in his face. The Avalanche are just taunting him. It was he had it coming in a way. But the Steve Moore thing was way overblown and, a really black eye on the NHL for several years after that.
A lot of what happened in this game could not even close to happen today. I think also with what we know about concussions. Rewatching this, I forgot that Claude Lemieux even came back in this game.
Right. People forget that.
Completely.
I know he assisted on a goal by Valerie Kaminsky that put him up 5-3 in the third period. Game was over. Claude wins again. That's what we're all saying. Mm-hmm. The Red Wings pushed back.
So prior to that, this wasn't even the first fight that broke out. There was the one fight, your standard hockey fight, was up between Severin and Pusher.
Right.
Yeah. So that happens just in the first few minutes, and again, there's more fighting going on. Maltby and Corbeil go at it, and then, but it's just again really good hockey. I mean, everything sort of feels different, and I think. If you just look at a stat line, if there's just one thing you can always point out, why is playoff hockey so much different than regular hockey? Just look at hits, the amount of hits that take place in a regular season compared to playoffs. It's night and day. They're averaging 2.5 times. And I actually did research this, 2.5 times more hits per game in the playoffs. That's just how that is. So
that's a good stat.
Well, every now and then I come up with one. Now I've used it. I got nothing left. So the rest of you are going to have to carry me. Glenn's used to that.
I got a strong back.
Yes. Well, hence why you're also Buffalo's greatest triathlete.
This is true.
Mm-hmm. So going into this, with 1822 in, we get finally, and if you were going to try to picture, okay, who's going to wind up starting this brawl? These are the last two people you're going to come up with. And Igor Larionov and Peter Forsberg. And
I don't know if I'd be the last person I'd pick, Peter Forsberg anyway, because he was very involved in a lot of stuff. But Igor Larionov, yes, I think that was one guy I would never expect to be involved in anything. He was known as the professor. Guy who wore glasses off the ice, the very astute, erudite Russian player who'd been a veteran of many things. I believe 1980 Olympic Games too, if I'm not mistaken, or I may be wrong on that. That might be Fetisov only. Anyway, Forsberg was scrappy, always got into stuff. everybody was trying to take a pound out of Peter Forsberg because he invited it, and to his, he would admit this, I just couldn't back down from anybody who hit me. I had to hit him back. So Larionov hit him, Forsberg, and it was a bit of it was not as innocent as people think. Like there's pretty hard punches thrown between those two, and pounding on the ice and stuff. So yeah, but that's
The
how
fight's over super quick.
Play stopped, and everybody else started dancing around. The two people who had no dance partners were McCarty and Lemieux, and that's how it all started.
And that's just the way he wanted it. I was watching an interview with McCarty when he's sort of like narrating that whole breakdown, and he says like as soon as he saw that, his first thing was to look for Lemieux.
Yep. And Lemieux he admits that he was stupid at that time. Like he should have been looking for more of that. He should have definitely been on the guard for more of that, but somehow he had his face turned. He was just watching Forsberg and Larionov, and that's all it took was to have an unguarded Darren McCarty to see that he's a little bit distracted, and then boom, he throws a haymaker at his face. It was not technically a sucker punch because Lemieux was facing him, but I still don't buy the Darren McCarty explanation that it was completely face to face. And
what he does say,
it was technically a cold cock. I'll give him that, but it was a bit of a sucker punch too. The guy hadn't even taken his eye off one thing for a second, and all of a sudden Darren McCarty, I guess technically looked at his face for 1 second, but threw a haymaker. But that was part of the thing. Lemieux just should have been better prepared for that, and that's how things changed, because he looked like completely destroyed guy in that fight, and everybody in Detroit just rose up and roared like Romans at the Colosseum, sticking their thumbs up in joy over the opponent who gets destroyed in front of them. I mean, that actually happened. Look it up, Roman gladiators. And it just changed everything, because the Avalanche were sort of humiliated coming out of that game. And we can talk more about why they were. I think the Red Wings had to win that game, but that happened more after that incident. But the thing is, Lemieux should have been more cognizant of what was about to come, because everybody telegraphed it that day, including the Detroit newspapers, who put Lemieux's face in a wanted poster in that day Detroit News. So he should have known better.
I guess when you're young and you're a young athlete, you just have that feeling of invincibility.
That's right. The Avs felt invincible going into that game. Like nothing can touch us. We won the Stanley Cup. We're President's Trophy winners again. These Detroit Red Wings are soft, a bunch of pretenders. We'll just go in and bully them again. That was the attitude.
But yeah. The other thing though is Lemieux was like, I think 30 years old or close to it. He was no spring chicken. But I think he was probably very used to almost, not what he did at Draper's just over the top, but he was used to provoking other players.
And getting away with it.
My favorite is early in his career when he decided he was thirsty and knew that Ron Hextall would go completely crazy if he took a drink during the playoffs from his water bottle. That was when Hextall could, Robbie Brown and others could just get Hextall going crazy. But Lemieux knows what he's doing. That's one of the things that made him what he was during his career.
Right. But this had been a thing a little bit way beyond the usual Lemieux thing. Hit a guy a little bit from the blind side, but you don't kill the guy. The problem was, Draper was hit from behind. His face goes into the boards. He had a broken eye socket, bunch of teeth displaced, on and on, blood everywhere. So, this was different. And
It wasn't just this fight. It wasn't just the one punch. He is able to, and I still couldn't believe
That was something straight out of WWE.
Yeah, because he was able to push him into he's turtled up.
Yeah.
Pushes him in front of his teammates
But
and knees him.
That if you talk to Avalanche players, that was the most sort of manhood, humiliating part of the whole thing. The fact that Lemieux got dragged over to the Red Wing bench, down and turtling, and then punched more of that. And with blood on the ice, it became like a Roman Colosseum gladiator thing where everybody just was out for blood.
McCarty would say so.
If Lemieux had just put up his hands on that first punch, taken a couple more, right, but he gets up and whatever, throws a few back, teammates break it up. But no, it became like nobody would break up the fight, for one thing. Draper, McCarty's able to grab hold of his jersey and literally drag him over to the Red Wings side of the bench and then keep pounding him. And it became a literal, I try not to get too like psychological about everything, but at that moment, the Avalanche, one of their better players was getting humiliated, not only physically but emotionally on the ice in Detroit, with everybody standing up around them like Roman people in the Coliseum giving their thumbs up to this thing,
Well, go ahead.
Yeah, it just, again, I'll say though, if the Avalanche had just managed to hold on to win that game with Lemieux back, all of this was blunted. But the fact is, Darren McCarty scored the overtime goal to win the game too, and that's what really changed things. If
the salt in the wound,
score the game-winning overtime goal, the Avalanche go out of Detroit saying, you beat up Cole Lemieux with a couple sucker punches, but we still beat your asses, and we'll see you in the playoffs. And I think that would have totally weighed the difference. But in fact, the Avalanche lost. It
Not
just
only
gave.
that, McCarty didn't even get a fighting penalty for that.
No, he got a double minor.
Yeah,
that's one of the things that in my book, I got the referee at the time, Paul Dvorsky, to admit that he screwed up. He should have given McCarty a 5-minute major and kicked him out of the game for third man in. But for some reason he didn't. He was distracted, he said. He didn't see everything. When he got to the bench with, I think it was Ray Scapanello, one of the linesmen said, well, I think you need to kick him out. But Dvorsky said, yeah, I don't know. I didn't see everything. So he kept McCarty in the game.
Look, Scampy probably has some very colorful words to Paul. Very colorful. I know.
The other beautiful thing too, and actually, I think, Glenn, when you were bringing this up to me, this is the game you wanted to do. I think you were really more looking forward to talking about the goalie fight.
Yeah. Well, first, and again, I looked at the calendar, and I'm pretty sure I didn't see this game live because it was a Thursday night. I was in college, and there was like 50-cent Honey Brown nights at the local bar, so we would go there and just get ripped because who goes to class on Friday? But yeah, Detroit wanted this. Shanahan comes out of nowhere, gets in the way of Waugh trying to break up that fight. Vernon flies out of nowhere, tries to. They're going Shanahan, Vernon, and Waugh. Then Shanahan and Waugh, and then Waugh finally breaks free, and then he's looking over at Lemieux. Yeah. Doesn't go over there to help them, but then goes back over and then takes on Vernon, and that was just an amazing punch that Vernon threw. They just opened him up, and these goalies just flew right to center ice and just flung their bodies at whatever was in their way. That I don't know if it's the greatest goalie fight ever, but it was very enthusiastic.
It had the best start.
Yeah,
I think that's another going back to Adrian, your point of just the whole humiliation. Now your goalie got beat up too.
Right. Yeah, actually, I think Waugh might have won that fight on points, but you're right. Waugh's the guy who came out with a bloody face, and I think he may have lost the final wrestling match to the ground. But I think if you actually look at that fight, like Waugh hit Vernon pretty hard a couple times. I think that Vernon's low center of gravity helped him so much in that fight. You know, Wah was like 6'1", almost 6'2". Vernon was like 5'7". So it was going to take a lot to knock Mike Vernon to the ground. But yet Mike Vernon did great in that fight. He had actually, you know, sort of practiced mentally in his mind for that kind of thing. You know, I talked to him for my book, and he said he was at that time, you know, very much criticized by the Red Wings fan base for not winning the big ones. You know, he'd lost the series to New Jersey when they were favored heavily. They get swept. Martin Brodeur outplays him drastically. You know, the next season, you know, the Red Wings were, like I said, a fourth place team. You know, they were just known as not a very, you know, tough enough team. And Mike Vernon, sort of little goalie who can't win the big ones anymore, even though he had won a Stanley Cup, by the way, against Patrick Waugh in 1989. People forget that. Yeah, so he talked to his brother. He said, you know, I think you need a fight to get out of this. You know, if you get a chance, fight. And Vernon's brother's advice was, I think his name was Kevin, just keep throwing them. Just keep throwing them. You'll be so tired. You're going to be one of the worst fighters ever, but just keep throwing them and go down with honor if you do. And that's what he did against Waugh. I think Waugh had a better shots, but somehow you're right. I think Vernon, I don't know if Vernon's punch opened up the cut over his eye. I think there's still some debate about that. It may have been Shanahan's sort of cross check on Waugh coming into the scramble. If you recall, it was a huge part of it. It was sort of a, you know, Waugh comes through Lemieux's aid. Brendan Shanahan breaks free of his tanglement with Adam Foote, and then, you know, weirdly they meet in midair, sort of a collision. They both jump into each other. I don't know if Waugh got hurt on that thing with a cut or not. I know Waugh hurt his shoulder on that, and it was a problem for him moving forward, even though he won another Stanley Cup and had a great career. But yeah, that's Mike Vernon, Patrick Waugh fight was, I would say, the best goalie fight ever. I'm sure Ron Hextall might disagree with something, but I think that was the most electric fight ever. And yeah, it's the cover of my book too. So I'm obviously gonna say that's the best.
Nothing wrong with that.
At the end of the show, I just plug all my other stuff too. So
my visual with Waugh is just the roundhouses where he was just like wildly, like even if he got air, he was gonna not get cheated.
Yeah, but those punches wouldn't have hurt that much. Trust me, I stood next to Patrick Waugh many times in the locker room. First of all, I'm 6'6", about 240, so everybody looks a little small to me. But you know, he was not a fighter, so to speak. I can promise you that. He was a temperamental guy, though. Had a massive temper. Like, you didn't want, if you got Patrick Waugh mad, he was gonna blow back at you, and I know that for many times.
Well, I mean, him going to the owner in Montreal, telling him, or the GM, whatever it was, and saying, "I'm not playing for you anymore," and then walking off.
Oh
yeah. He's got a little bit of a temper.
Well, don't forget his first game coaching the Avalanche in 2013. Bruce Boudreau got the glass partition pushed on him.
Yeah. That was the first Avalanche game he ever coached, and he pushed over the partition against Bruce Boudreau with Anaheim Ducks. Yep, that was a famous moment too with his temper.
So as this is all sort of happening, Forsberg gets hurt. So he is actually, out of all the people who were involved in this, the only person who didn't come back on the ice is Forsberg.
Right.
I can't recall. Did he even come back that year at all?
Oh yeah, he did. Yeah, no, he did. He played a full playoff slate.
I remember. Yeah.
he was a full participant. I think he was just kept out for that game for precautionary reasons. But yeah, he was a participant. He played against the Red Wings in that series. But yeah, the Avs lost in 6 games.
So as we're moving forward, as all of this is sort of going on, then start of the second period, we get another fight. 4 seconds in. The commentators are there thinking that everything's all out of their systems. I'm sure the refs are thinking that the same. Clearly, that wasn't the case. They certainly misjudged a whole lot because it didn't take long. Who threw down this in the start of the second? I'm trying to remember here. Was that Shanahan and Foot? You got to love that. Shanahan's now what is he, the disciplinarian now of the National Hockey
The irony.
He was.
Oh my God, that is so funny. I guess not Dwight Schultz, Dave Schultz didn't answer the phone that day. Dwight Schultz, thank you. Yeah, Dwight Schultz was the guy. You were going to let me have that one. You were hoping I was going to get that one wrong, weren't you? Anyway.
I knew where you were going. I just wasn't going to help you.
I know you weren't going to help me. And that's why you're not just the best co-host for nothing.
This is true.
Mm-hmm. So when the start of the second period, did you feel did we?
I'm here.
Oh, okay. Did it feel like it was over, or did you think, look, no, this is not over? Because the players on the ice. Like, what was your feeling?
No, I didn't think it was over. I knew Detroit was a good team, and no, not at all. In fact, I kept thinking to myself, like, if the Avalanche get this clock to move a little, get to the period. I think the problem, whole second period, everything got bogged down in fights and everything. And yet, if you look at that game, the Avalanche came out strong in the third period, took the lead, 5-3 lead.
Yeah, and McCarty gets into another fight too.
But with Patrick Waugh and net, everything had sort of been calmed down a little bit by then. Not as many fights. All the Avalanche had to do was calm down. Just win the game. But their defense was not as good that year. A lot of people say that if the Avalanche had only had their same sort of core defense that next year after they won the cup, they would have won it again. But they let guys go. Curtis Decision was a big loss. They lost some personality to their team a little bit. Chris Simon was a big loss.
Forgot about him. Yeah.
If they had Chris Simon for that game, I don't think half of those fights happened.
Mm-hmm. He's a big boy.
Pierre Lacroix and Chris Simon had a petty little fight over like a couple $100,000, and off he went to Washington. And I know Decision was part of that trade, and I think Decision got traded to Carolina right after that. But they just sort of lost some of their toughness and machismo. And Detroit, I think, was smart enough to exploit that in that game.
Now, you're there when on this plane ride back or wherever they're going next. How did it feel like the air was deflated?
Actually, I was not on that team plane coming back. I did fly with the Avs a lot those first 2 years, but not on that game. I know that they were humiliated. They tried to make the best of it. We just lost. Hey, we got a point. We're still the President's Trophy winners. We got a point. Mm-hmm. But what happened was Detroit got so much confidence from that win and internal confidence that they could actually not only beat the Avalanche on the ice, but beat them up physically. It took 2 rounds for them to meet. The Avalanche won their 2 rounds. The Red Wings won their 2 rounds, and both had to struggle a little bit to get there. People forget too, the Avalanche won game 1 at home, and they had a 2-0 lead in game 2 at home. But they were not playing well, and Detroit finally just started getting the breaks. They got a couple lucky goals against Wild, and they win game 2. And once they went to Detroit, everything changed. Like the Detroit media was just out for Bear, ripping the ass, calling them chokers and fakers. Avalanche went into that game 3 just sort of like, I think just sort of coasting on their reputation a little bit. They didn't really know what was coming in Detroit. And Detroit was just, to their credit, I mean, the fans in Detroit are unbelievable. I've always said this, like, I wrote a book on the rivalry, and I was a little bit known as an Avs homer, but not to the extent where I want to not give credit to the other team. And I always thought that, geez, Detroit fans are really good. I want to sell books to them too. So whenever,
well, you got Scotty Bowman to do the forward.
I know.
Yeah.
That was such an honor. I still can't believe that happened. Like me, get Scotty Bowman to write my forward. I mean, I just can't believe that actually happened. Like I still
Scotty Bowman's a really good guy.
Can't even believe it happened. Like I was a kid who grew up watching Scotty Bowman in the early 70s. Like, are you kidding me? He's writing the forward to my book. This is too much. To me, to this day, it's still too much. I can't believe it happened.
Yeah, he's on Twitter now. He just got on Twitter.
He is. He's very active still. He's sharp as a tack. I talk to Scotty all the time still, and I can tell you he is sharp as a tack. 89 years old. I'm telling you, he's sharper than guys 1/4 his age.
Now, if Detroit doesn't win this, do they win the Stanley Cup this year? Just that one game? Like this could be one of the most pivotal regular season games maybe in history.
No, I don't think they do. I think they lose. If they don't win that game against the Avalanche, I think they still find a way to lose, because everybody would still said, yeah, Detroit, okay, they want to fight against Paslawki, a big deal, but they still lost the game. I think that would have been too mentally in their heads at that time. But the fact that they won the game and they're sort of brand new, just this new identity all of a sudden, I think that made all the difference. But if they lose the game, I don't think they win the Stanley Cup. No.
I think also too, Detroit winning the Stanley Cup that year, and guys, correct me if I'm wrong. I don't think I'm incorrect on that, but that's when they had their core 5 of
right.
Of former Soviet players, right, the Russian 5. But that was like the first time, I think, in Stanley Cup history that a team won that had that many elite Europeans. And even in this game, listening to the commentary, I forget who it was. I think Mike Knable. I might be wrong on his name. I couldn't really remember. He made his NHL debut that game. And they were joking, well, you got to be tough to play here. Hey, and if not, there's always Europe. Yeah, there was that reputation, and kind of rightfully so to a point where Europeans just were not tough.
Well, that all changed with the Red Wings. I mean,
right.
They were, to their credit, one of the first teams that really brought over the Russians and the Europeans. I think technically, was it New Jersey? I think Fetisov went to New Jersey first and sort of broke a lot of barriers, but then he went to the Red Wings. And if I'm wrong, delete that part of this podcast. But
Calgary, I can't remember who Calgary signed.
Yeah, we don't edit. It takes too much effort.
Well, that's right. The Stastny brothers came over in Quebec. That's one of the really first, right?
But there's still that
right
thought process.
Makarov to Calgary too.
Yeah.
Right. And then all of a sudden in Detroit, you have these 5 Russian guys playing basically at times, all 5 starting 5s. And, wow, were they good at? They brought a lot of different, personality back to the league. I think the NHL at the time was still sort of struggling along with this sort of goonish reputation in the league, even though they had guys like Gretzky and Lemieux. It was still like a goon league in a lot of ways.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, but Lemieux retired because of the garage hockey in '96.
Well, he actually retired more because of his lymphoma thing. Cancer. Right. So but he was going to keep playing, but he missed a couple years. He came back and had a few more really good years.
2000, yeah.
Yeah, but his back was just a
probably
mess.
Garage league, and he was right in a lot of ways. I mean, it was such a vicious, dirty game back then. I mean, I started covering the NHL in '94. And I can't tell you how many times like defensemen would just go. These goon defensemen would just go hack and whack the top players like Forsberg, Lemieux, even Gretzky at that time. And it was just like shrugged off as part of hockey. Thankfully today, I think we have a more equitable system in the game, even though there are still the occasional dirty hits, and you're never going to take that out of the game, right? I mean, you can't just like decree there will never be a dirty hit again in the NHL, right? That's just not going to happen with grown men skating really fast against each other, want to win a Stanley Cup. Mm-hmm. But back then it was really dirty and chippy. And when the Russian 5 came in, they started to change some of that. They played with more skill. You watch some of those early Red Wings teams with the Russian 5. Man, they were good. They really controlled the puck so well, and they brought a different, not only attitude to the NHL, but a different skill level. And I think everything sort of evolved from there. We have a much more well-rounded league now today, where skill really is the best factor, how you're going to win, not how many cheap shots you can take at the other team's best player. I hated that. Even covering the game back then in '95, I don't know how many cheap shots I saw Peter Forsberg take, but if I had $1 for every one back in those days, I'd have a really nice steak dinner at Morton's Steakhouse tonight.
As opposed to talking to us?
Yeah.
Well, thank you both so much for joining us. Now it's my turn to plug things. I didn't get Scotty Bowman to write my foreword, but I got Roddy Piper. Okay, I really didn't. The guy I wrote the book for did, but he's still technically the foreword for my book. So I thought that was pretty cool. Chavo Guerrero Instant Classic about the late, great Chavo Guerrero. Check that out. Also on Amazon. Didn't sell as well as Adrian's books, but maybe we could work on that. I don't know. By the way, I'm never writing another book again for a wrestler. Never, 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 never. That's just me venting. Tomorrow, Chris Bourdain and I, we're going to be recording on, this crap was on national television. The Harlem Globetrotters visit Gilligan's Island.
No, I watched that. I watched that live at the time. That's how old I am.
I'm jumping.
I might have seen that too myself, live at that time too.
I did watch that the night it came out. I was a huge fan of both teams. So
that was like
incredible. I want to listen to this podcast.
Oh, absolutely.
Wasn't that like jumping the shark before jumping the shark?
Well, jumping the shark started with the Happy Days episode.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Actually,
that's right.
Wasn't for Jump the Shark, but you wouldn't be talking. That inspired me to do this.
Let me tell you guys, when that thing came on, Harlem Globetrotters at Gilligan's Island, that was a big deal to guys like me who grew up watching both those people. Not as much the Harlem Globetrotters, even though I saw them in the early 70s as a kid in New Hampshire. I think I got a ball signed by Marcus Haynes, which I promptly lost. But yeah, Gilligan's Island, I mean, staple of 1970s kids' youth like me. So when those things merged, that was must-see TV, guys. And is
that episode out there on YouTube?
I found it on Facebook, believe it or not.
Of course. No, it's out
Send me that link.
I will send you that link, yes.
I'll send it to you.
Yeah, for sure.
That's must-see TV.
Yes. Also, too, we just recorded How the Hell Did This Go #1, where we looked at Mbop by Hanson.
Now that I can't speak to.
I actually defend this song. I didn't mind these kids. They could play.
Listen, guys.
It was catchy.
I grew up listening to Kiss and still worship Kiss, so I can't judge anybody on their music taste.
Kiss is my favorite bad band.
Are you serious? No.
You go back and listen to their Unplugged album or the Unplugged show, and that was a pretty good performance.
I'm not okay.
How old is the oldest guy in this group that I'm talking to right now?
Well, I'm 50.
Oh, you're
Okay,
50.
you got me, Kirk.
Yeah, it's
I'm
always-
59.
You know a pretty good amount about Kiss. You've seen him. I'm
Oh, yeah.
50, almost 58. So
I've,
This
Yeah,
is the best.
that's
I've
actually
seen him 3 times, but I mean, like, how do
That's-
I get this?
that's actually a really crucial period, though. Those 8 years of sort of,
Mhm.
you know, learning curve about music in those 8 years. Now, listen, I love the Beatles more. I love the Rolling Stones more. I love Led Zeppelin more. I love George Gershwin more. But Kiss has always been my guilty pleasure as a rock band, and I will defend them to the grave. Yeah, you're not going to advance your number of brain cells probably listening to Kiss, but you're going to have a good headbanging time still. Like, you're going to bang your head.
They knew
you
what
know,
they were.
primal feeling about music, and that's it. But that's all I'll say. I don't want to get
I'll have to send you. Well, I'll have to send you when Chris and I looked at Kiss Meets the Phantom of the Park.
Oh man, I saw that when it came out in 1978, right on NBC TV.
Yeah.
People forget it was the highest rated show on NBC for that whole year, and yet it was a god awful movie. Even I would say that, like, it was awful. Yeah, it was just brutal. I mean, it was just terrible.
Produced
But yeah,
by Hanna-Barbera, which, like,
but
there.
other people have made terrible movies too. The Beatles made a really bad movie with Magical Mystery Tour, which is terrible. The Bee Gees made a movie about Sgt. Pepper album with Peter Frampton and Aerosmith, which was terrible when it came out. It was just one of the worst movies you'll ever see. Go look it up. Bee Gees Sgt. Pepper album, just awful. But so that was the case back then. There was a lot of bands that made really bad, crappy movies on the the advice of their agents. Hey, we're hot, let's make a movie. But you're a musician for a reason, not an actor. That's what you find out on all these things, especially with Kiss Meets the Phantom of the Park. One of the worst movies ever made.
Yes, it was. It was very, very bad and hard to watch. But I managed. Also, but next week we're recording on, how the hell did this go? Number 1, Kokomo, Aruba, Jamaica. Ooh, I want to take ya. So we'll be doing that. Also, weekly is the Hall of Fame show with Evan Nolan and I, where we look at Hall of Fame related news. And Glenn and I are going to plug our project, the United States Athletic Hall of Fame. You can check that out. You can vote on www.noteinhalloffame.com/USA, because nobody came up with the United States Athletic Hall of Fame. So
we did.
Yes, and we trademarked it.
Absolutely. And we're taking applications for the bricks and mortar location. So if anyone's listening that want to put their hat in the ring for that, Manitoba for the U.S. Okay, yeah, absolutely. That makes sense.
It could happen.
It could.
It could happen.
The United States Athletic Hall of Fame in Manitoba, Canada.
Tourism might spike here because of it. That's my sales pitch.
Awesome.
Yeah. And with all of that, wherever you are, wherever you may be, stay safe, everybody.